My name is Anna, and at 34 years old, I never imagined I'd be standing in the rain outside my own home at midnight, watching my husband Marcus change the locks while I clutched nothing but my purse. The security code I'd used for 10 years no longer worked. Inside that purse was my late father's old leather wallet, something I'd carried everywhere since he passed. Before I tell you how that forgotten wallet changed everything, where are you watching from? Please hit subscribe if you want to hear how one old bank card brought down an entire empire. The rain had started 3 hours earlier, right around the time I discovered my husband of 10 years in our bed with my cousin Lisa. But to understand how I ended up locked out of my own life, I need to take you back to when everything seemed perfect. I met Marcus Thornton 8 years ago at a charity gala for the Boston Children's Hospital. My father William had passed away just 6 months before leaving me adrift in grief. Dad raised me alone after Mom died when I was 12, and losing him felt like losing my last anchor to the world. I was teaching third grade at a public school in Dorchester, living in a small apartment trying to make sense of life without the man who'd been my everything. Marcus appeared like something out of a movie. Tall, confident from one of those old Boston families whose names appear on hospital wings and university buildings. He found me crying quietly on the terrace, offered me his handkerchief, and spent the rest of the evening making me laugh for the first time in months. He pursued me with the kind of intensity that made me feel like I was worth pursuing. Flowers arrived at my classroom every Monday. Dinner reservations at restaurants I'd only read about in magazines. Weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, where his family had a compound. "You deserve to be taken care of," he'd tell me, stroking my hair as we sat by his fireplace. "Let me give you the life your father would have wanted for you." My father. Sweet, quiet dad who worked as an accountant for a small firm downtown. He'd always worried about money, taking on extra consulting work at night, coming home exhausted, but still making time to help me with homework. Before he died, lying in that hospital bed, he'd pressed his worn leather wallet into my hands. "Keep this safe, sweetheart," he'd whispered, his voice barely audible over the beeping machines. "Everything I have is yours. Promise me you'll keep it with you." I'd assumed it was the morphine talking, a dying man's need to pass on something tangible. The wallet contained his old driver's license, a photo of Mom, and what looked like an old credit card I'd never seen him use. I tucked it into my purse and carried it everywhere, transferring it each time I changed bags. It became my talisman, my connection to him. Marcus and I married 2 years after we met in a ceremony. His mother Patricia planned down to the last gardenia. 400 guests at the Four Seasons, a reception that made the society pages, and a honeymoon in Bora Bora that cost more than my teacher's salary for a year. I moved into the Thornton family estate in Beacon Hill, a massive Georgian revival that had been in Marcus's family for 3 generations. "You don't need to work anymore," Marcus announced the day after we returned from our honeymoon. "My wife shouldn't be exhausting herself with other people's children when we'll have our own soon." I resisted at first. Teaching wasn't just my job. It was my calling. But Marcus wore me down with logic that seemed sound at the time. His business required a full-time social partner. There were client dinners to host, charity events to organize, his mother's various committees to join. So I submitted my resignation, packed up my classroom supplies, and threw myself into being Mrs. Marcus Thornton. The transformation was gradual enough that I didn't notice it happening. First, Marcus took over our finances completely. "You shouldn't worry your pretty head about money," he'd say, giving me a black American Express card for shopping and household expenses. He handled all our investments, our taxes, our bills. I had an allowance generous by most standards, but every purchase appeared on statements only he reviewed. Then came the social isolation disguised as concern. "Claire's a lovely girl, but she's not really our kind of people, is she?" he'd say about my best friend from college. "Maybe you should cultivate friendships with the other wives at the club." Those other wives with their frozen smiles and Xanax prescriptions, who competed over whose husband bought them the biggest anniversary gift and whose children got into the most exclusive preschools. My cousin Lisa started coming around more often about 2 years ago. She was an artist struggling to make rent on her studio apartment in Somerville. I'd always felt guilty that I'd married into money while she waited tables to support her painting. So when she needed help, I convinced Marcus to let her use the pool house as a studio. She'd come for dinner, help me with the endless entertaining Marcus's position required. She was family, the only family I had left besides the Thorntons, who never let me forget I wasn't born into their world. Looking back, the signs were everywhere, bright as neon in a dark street. I just chose to drive past them with my eyes closed. It started 6 months ago, though I now realize it had probably been going on much longer. Marcus began working late consistently always, with perfectly reasonable explanations. Big merger with a Korean firm. Complex negotiations that required dinner meetings. His secretary, Jennifer, always confirmed his whereabouts when I called her voice professionally sympathetic. "Oh, Mrs. Thornton, he's just stepped into another meeting. Can I take a message?" Then there were the credit card charges. A $1,500 charge at Cartier that Marcus explained as a gift for a client's wife. Theater tickets on nights he was supposedly in New York for business. Hotel charges in the city when he'd told me he was staying at the office. Each time I questioned something, Marcus had an answer ready delivered with just enough irritation to make me feel foolish for asking. "Do you have any idea how hard I work to maintain our lifestyle?" he'd snap. "While you're planning your little charity luncheons, I'm building an empire. The least you could do is trust me." Lisa's visits increased. She'd arrive in the morning while Marcus was at work painting in the pool house, then staying for dinner. She was having a hard time, she said. The gallery that had promised her a show had backed out. Her boyfriend had left her for someone younger. She needed family, needed support. And I gave it, freely grateful to have someone who knew me before I became Mrs. Thornton, someone who remembered my father, who didn't judge me for coming from Dorchester instead of Beacon Hill. She started dressing differently. Designer jeans that looked suspiciously new for someone claiming poverty. A leather jacket that bore a remarkable resemblance to one I'd admired at Neiman Marcus. When I commented on her new perfume, she laughed and said she'd gotten samples from Sephora, but it smelled exactly like the Tom Ford fragrance Marcus had supposedly bought for his mother's birthday. Claire tried to warn me. We were having one of our increasingly rare lunches when she set down her fork and looked me straight in the eye. "Anna, I saw Marcus at the Mandarin Oriental last Tuesday. Middle of the day. He was with a woman. Probably a client," I said automatically, though my stomach clenched. "In the elevator going up to the rooms, with his hand on her back." "You must be mistaken." But Claire's expression told me she wasn't, and worse, that she knew I knew it too. Marcus became crueler in small ways. Comments about my appearance that seemed like suggestions, but stung like slaps. "Have you considered Pilates?" Sarah Blackwood swears by her trainer. Comparisons to other wives that always found me lacking. "Jennifer Chen's wife speaks 4 languages. Maybe you should take up something besides those mindless book clubs." His mother Patricia joined the chorus of criticism. "Such a shame you haven't given Marcus children yet." She'd sigh at every family dinner. "The Thornton line needs heirs. Perhaps you should see a specialist." I had seen a specialist. Several, actually. The fertility issues weren't mine. But Marcus had sworn me to secrecy about his low sperm count, making me promise never to embarrass him with such intimate information. So I absorbed his family's disappointment, their subtle suggestions that I was failing in my primary duty as his wife. The text messages should have been the final clue. Marcus had always been protective of his phone, but it became an obsession. He'd angle it away from me when responding to messages. Delete entire conversation threads while I was in the room. Once it rang while he was in the shower, and when I called out that someone named Elle was calling, he burst out dripping wet and naked to grab it from my hand. "Client," he said. "Lawrence Chen. Very private person." But Lawrence Chen was a 60-year-old businessman, and the voice I'd heard in that split second before Marcus grabbed the phone was definitely female, definitely young, and definitely familiar. Thursday evening, October 24th. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. Marcus had said he was having dinner with potential investors from Tokyo. Important enough that he'd had his tuxedo pressed, important enough that he'd warned me not to wait up. It was our anniversary the next day. 11 years since our first date. I'd planned to surprise him with reservations at L'Espalier, the restaurant where he'd proposed. I called to confirm our table for the following evening, and the hostess said something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, Mrs. Thornton, Mr. Thornton just arrived for his regular Thursday reservation." Shall I tell him you called regular Thursday reservation? My hands shook as I grabbed my keys. The rain had just started fat drops that splattered against the windshield as I drove toward Back Bay. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he was there with clients. Maybe the hostess was confused. I parked around the corner and walked to the restaurant, rain soaking through my coat. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the warm glow of candlelight, the elegant diners enjoying their expensive meals. And there in the corner booth we'd shared for my birthday last year was my husband, with my cousin Lisa. She was wearing the red dress I'd helped her pick out last month, the one she said she needed for a gallery opening. The diamond necklace around her throat caught the light as she threw her head back, laughing at something Marcus said. His hand was on her thigh, proprietary and intimate. As I watched frozen on that rain-soaked sidewalk, he leaned over and kissed her. Not a friendly peck. Not a familial greeting. The kind of kiss that spoke of practiced intimacy of countless times their lips had met before. A waitress approached the window to adjust the curtain and recognized me. Her eyes widened in shock, then pity. That pity broke my paralysis. I stumbled back to my car, rain mixing with tears, and drove home on autopilot. Some part of me hoped I was having a nightmare, that I'd wake up safe in my bed with Marcus beside me. But when I reached our bedroom, the door was locked. I could hear sounds inside. Laughter. The creak of our bed. My bed. The bed where I'd lain beside Marcus for 10 years, where we'd tried so desperately to conceive the children his mother demanded, where I'd cried in his arms after my father's funeral. My hands moved without conscious thought, pulling out my phone, hitting record. I needed evidence, proof. Something that would make this real when my mind tried to convince me later that I'd imagined it all. The door opened. Marcus emerged shirtless, his hair mussed in a way I knew so well. His eyes went from satisfied to shocked to furious in the span of a heartbeat. Behind him, Lisa clutched my anniversary gift from last year, a silk robe from Paris around her body. Anna. Not a question, not an apology. Just my name, flat and cold as winter stone. How long? My voice didn't sound like mine. Too calm. Too steady. Lisa laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Anna. Sweet, stupid Anna. You really never suspected all those evenings I stayed for dinner, all those times Marcus worked late." Marcus grabbed my phone, saw it was recording, and smashed it against the wall. The violence of it, the casual destruction, shocked me more than the infidelity. "You're going to delete whatever you recorded," he said, his voice the same tone he used with disappointing employees. "You're going to pack your things and leave quietly, and we're going to handle this like civilized people." Civilized? I heard myself laugh high and hysterical. "You're sleeping with my cousin in our bed and you want to talk about civilized?" His face darkened. "Your cousin, please. Lisa's more woman than you ever were. At least she can satisfy a man's needs. At least she's not some frigid schoolteacher playing dress-up in a world she doesn't belong in." Each word was calculated to wound, and they found their mark. But Lisa wasn't finished. "Did you really think you deserved him, the princess of Beacon Hill with the nobody? Father who died broke. You should be grateful Marcus gave you 10 years of a life you could never have afforded on your own." "I want a divorce," Marcus said, straightening his shoulders like he was closing a business deal. "And thanks to that lovely prenup you signed, you'll get exactly what you brought to this marriage. Nothing. I've already moved the assets, closed the credit cards. Your car's in my name, remember? This house, Thornton Family Trust. That jewelry you're wearing, technically mine, purchased with my money." I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "You planned this." "For months," he admitted with a cold smile. "Did you think I'd stay shackled to a barren nobody forever? My mother's been begging me to find a proper wife who can give me heirs. Lisa's already pregnant." The room spun. Lisa's hand moved protectively to her stomach, And I saw it then, the slight swell I'd attributed to the stress eating she'd claimed was ruining her artist's figure. "Security's on their way up," Marcus continued. "I called them when I heard you in the hall. Told them you were threatening us. You're going to leave now quietly, or I'll have you arrested for domestic violence. Who do you think the police will believe, the respected businessman or the hysterical wife?" As if on cue, two security guards appeared in the doorway. I recognized them. Tony, who always asked about my book recommendations. David, who'd helped me carry groceries just yesterday. Their faces were carefully neutral, now professional. "Mrs. Thornton," Tony said gently, "we need you to come with us." "Can I at least pack a bag?" Marcus laughed. "With what?" "Everything in this house is mine. Even the clothes on your back, technically, but I'm not cruel enough to make you leave naked. Take your purse and go." He moved to the window, then throwing it open despite the rain. My clothes, my books, my photos, everything I'd accumulated in 10 years of marriage went flying out into the night. I watched my life scatter across the manicured lawn, saw the neighbors' windows light up as they came to watch the show. "Go," Marcus said, "and don't come back. The locks are already being changed. The staff has been instructed not to let you in. If you try to contact me, I'll file a restraining order." Tony's hand on my elbow was gentle but firm. I grabbed my purse from the hall table, the leather strap of my father's wallet visible through the open zipper. As the elevator descended, I heard Lisa's laughter echoing down the hall, the sound following me out into the rain-soaked night where my life lay in pieces on the lawn. The Liberty Motel on Route 1 charged $59 a night and didn't ask questions about women who checked in after midnight with no luggage. The desk clerk, a young guy with kind eyes and a community college textbook open beside him, pretended not to notice I'd been crying. My purse contained exactly $43 in cash, my driver's license, and my father's wallet. The credit cards Marcus hadn't bothered to let me keep were useless, all declined when I'd tried to use them at the gas station. My phone was destroyed. My car, Marcus was right, was in his name. I'd walked 3 miles in designer heels that were never meant for walking, let alone in the rain, before finding this motel. I sat on the bed with its cigarette-burned comforter and counted my assets. $43. No phone. No car. No friends who weren't actually Marcus's friends first. Claire would help if I could reach her, but I didn't know her number by heart. Who memorizes phone numbers anymore? The television hummed with late-night infomercials, promising new lives for 3 easy payments. Outside trucks roared past on the highway, heading somewhere, anywhere but here. I opened my father's wallet, seeking comfort in the familiar worn leather, the smell that still faintly carried his Old Spice cologne. His driver's license photo showed him at 10 years before the cancer took him. He was smiling that quiet smile of his, the one that said he knew something you didn't but would tell you when the time was right. Behind the license was the photo of Mom, faded but still beautiful, and behind that, I'd never really looked at the card properly before. It wasn't a credit card like I'd assumed. The metal was black, heavier than normal cards, with no bank name or logo. Just a series of numbers embossed in silver and a symbol I didn't recognize, something between a key and a star. As I turned it over, a folded piece of paper fell out from behind it. My father's handwriting, careful and precise as always. "For Anna when you really need it. Safety Deposit Box 473, Boston Private Bank. Remember, sweetheart, I always knew this day might come. Everything I did was for you." Boston Private Bank. I knew the building, a discreet brownstone in the financial district, the kind that didn't advertise because its clients didn't need to be solicited. What was my father, who bought his clothes at Target and drove a 10-year-old Honda, doing with a safety deposit box at Boston Private Sleep, was impossible. I spent the night turning that card over in my hands, trying to remember any hint, any clue about my father's secret. He'd worked such long hours, often coming home after I was asleep. "Consulting work," he'd say vaguely when I asked. "Numbers work for private clients. Boring stuff, sweetheart." But there had been oddities. The time I'd surprised him at his office and found him on a conference call speaking what sounded like Russian. The expensive watch he'd quickly hidden, claiming it was a loan from a client. The men in dark suits who'd come to his funeral standing in the back, leaving before I could ask who they were. Morning came gray and bitter. I used the motel's complimentary coffee to warm my hands and tried to figure out my next move. The bank opened at 9. I had enough cash for bus fare. What did I have to lose? I was already at rock bottom, locked out of my home, betrayed by everyone I'd trusted. Maybe my father's safety deposit box contained some bonds, maybe a few $1,000s he'd saved. Enough to get me a lawyer at least. Enough to fight back. The walk from the bus stop to Boston Private Bank was only 3 blocks, but each step felt like a mile. My clothes from yesterday were wrinkled and rain-stained. I looked exactly like what I was, a discarded wife with nothing but desperate hope. The bank's interior was all mahogany and whispered conversations. The receptionist, immaculate in Chanel, looked at me with poorly concealed disdain until I pulled out the black card. Her face went white. "Please wait here, Ms. Williams. Anna Williams." I used my maiden name without thinking, and something shifted in her expression. "One moment, Ms. Williams." She picked up a phone, spoke in urgent whispers, then practically ran to the elevator. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my teacher's salary had been, and waited. 5 minutes, 10. Other clients came and went, conducting their business in hushed tones. 20 minutes. The elevator opened and the bank manager appeared. Not a branch manager. The nameplate on his approaching figure read, "Jonathan Hartley, President." Behind him was another man, older, with silver hair and a suit that screamed old money. "Ms. Williams?" Hartley's voice was carefully modulated, but I caught the tremor underneath. "That card. May I see it?" I handed it over reluctantly. He examined it with the reverence of someone handling a religious relic, then passed it to the older man, who pulled out a jeweler's loupe to examine the symbol. "It's authentic," the older man said. "Dear God. Jonathan, do you know what this is?" "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in private," Hartley suggested, already guiding me toward a private elevator I hadn't noticed before. We rose in silence to a floor that wasn't listed on the elevator panel. The doors opened onto a suite that looked more like a law firm than a bank, all Persian rugs and original artwork. The older man gestured me to a chair and finally introduced himself. "Thomas Blackwood, Private Wealth Management. Ms. Williams?" "Anna, your father was William Williams." I nodded, confusion mounting. "He passed away 2 years ago." "We know. We've been waiting for you." Blackwood moved to a wall safe, entering a long combination. "Your father left very specific instructions. We were not to contact you unless you came to us with that card. He said you'd only find it when you truly needed it." The room seemed to tilt as Blackwood placed document after document in front of me. Bank statements with numbers that didn't make sense, investment portfolios, property deeds, trust documents, all in my name, all waiting for the presentation of that black card to activate. "Your father wasn't just an accountant," Blackwood said gently, perhaps recognizing my shock. "He was one of the most brilliant forensic accountants the government ever employed. Strictly off the books, you understand. He specialized in tracking hidden assets, uncovering financial crimes that others couldn't even detect." My quiet, unassuming father, who wore the same 3 suits in rotation and packed lunch to save money. "I don't understand. 22 years ago, your father uncovered one of the largest fraud schemes in history. A network of shell companies laundering money for cartels hidden behind legitimate businesses. The government recovered over $3 billion thanks to his work. As per his agreement, he received a percentage as a finder's fee. Completely legal, completely legitimate, but paid through channels that wouldn't attract attention." "How much?" My voice was barely a whisper. Blackwood slid a summary sheet across the desk. The number at the bottom had so many zeros I had to count them twice. $47 million. And change. "But he lived so simply. He worried about paying for my college." "He never touched a penny," Blackwood explained. "Every cent was invested, managed, grown. He lived on his regular salary and put everything else away for you. He said money was dangerous if you weren't ready for it. that it should be a tool, not a master. My hands shook as I picked up another document, a letter in my father's handwriting. "My dearest Anna," it read. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you found yourself in trouble. I knew from the moment you introduced me to Marcus Thornton what he was. A man who measures worth in dollars and bloodlines. I investigated him, sweetheart. His family's fortune is built on fraud, just like the ones I used to uncover. But you loved him, and I hoped I was wrong. I prepared everything in case I wasn't. The money is yours, but more importantly, so is the information in this box. Marcus Thornton's father built his empire on insider trading and embezzlement. The evidence is all here gathered by someone who knows how to follow money trails. Use it wisely. Remember what I always told you, the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success. Build the life you deserve, not the one others think you should have. And know that everything I did, every late night, every missed baseball game, was so that one day when you needed it most, you'd have the power to save yourself. All my love, Dad." The tears came, then great sobbing gasps that 2 years of grief hadn't released. Blackwood discreetly produced tissues and waited. When I finally composed myself, he continued, "There's more. Your father set up a legal team for you, the best in Boston. They've been on retainer for 2 years waiting. Diane Sharp heads the team." Diane Sharp. I knew the name. She'd destroyed half the wealthy men in Boston in their divorces, earning the nickname the Surgeon for how precisely she could dissect a prenup. "She's expecting your call," Blackwood said, sliding a phone across the desk. "Your father also left instructions for us to provide you with immediate access to funds, a suite at the Ritz-Carlton, and anything else you might need." I stared at the phone. This morning I'd had $43 to my name. Now I had millions and a legal team. But more than that, I had proof that my father had seen this coming, had loved me enough to prepare for it, had given me weapons I didn't even know existed. "Mr. Blackwood," I said, my voice steady for the first time since finding Marcus with Lisa, "I need to make a call." "Of course. We'll give you privacy." He and Hartley moved toward the door, then Blackwood turned back. "Your father was a good man, Ms. Williams. He'd be proud of you for surviving this long on your own. Now let him help you one last time." As the door closed, I dialed the number Blackwood had written down. A crisp voice answered on the first ring. "Diane Sharp?" "Ms. Sharp, this is Anna Williams, formerly Anna Thornton. I believe you've been expecting my call. Anna, I've been waiting 2 years to hear from you. How quickly can you get to my office? We have a lot of work to do." I looked at the pile of documents, the evidence of my father's love and foresight, the tools of my resurrection. "Give me an hour. I need to check into a hotel and buy some clothes that aren't covered in yesterday's rain." "The Ritz has your suite ready," Blackwood called ahead. "And Anna, your father told me about the evidence he gathered. By the time we're done, Marcus Thornton won't just lose the divorce, he'll lose everything." The next 3 weeks moved with the intensity of a hurricane. Diane Sharp's office became my second home, a war room, where we planned the systematic dismantling of Marcus Thornton's carefully constructed life. The prenup I'd signed, the one Marcus was so confident would leave me with nothing, had a fascinating clause Diane discovered within hours. Infidelity voided it completely, but only if proven with documented evidence of sustained betrayal. The kind of evidence a forensic accountant's daughter might think to gather. The kind of evidence now being retrieved from cloud storage I'd backed my phone to automatically. "Your video might be destroyed," Diane explained, "but the cloud backup isn't. We have him on audio admitting to the affair, admitting to planning the divorce, admitting to hiding assets. That's fraud, by the way, and grounds for criminal prosecution." While Diane handled the legal warfare, I hired a private investigator named James Chen, recommended by Blackwood as the best in the business. What he uncovered in just 10 days was staggering. Marcus hadn't just been unfaithful with Lisa. There were others. Sarah from his office, a bartender named Nicole, the wife of one of his business partners. Chen had photos, credit card records, hotel receipts. A clear pattern of behavior going back 3 years. But the most damaging discovery came from Marcus's first wife, Elena. I hadn't even known he'd been married before. Elena Rodriguez was a doctor now living in California, but 15 years ago she'd been a young lawyer who'd made the mistake of marrying Marcus Thornton. Chen tracked her down and she agreed to a video call. "He destroyed me," she said simply. Her face was composed, but her hands trembled slightly. "When I found out about his affairs, he had me committed to a psychiatric facility. Said I was delusional paranoid. His family's money and connections made it stick. I spent 3 months locked up while he divorced me and took everything. It took me 5 years to rebuild my life." "Would you testify?" I asked. I've been waiting 15 years for someone to ask me that question. The investigation revealed more than just infidelity. Marcus had been embezzling from his own company using the exact same methods my father had once uncovered in criminal organizations. Shell companies in the Caymans, falsified contracts, investors' money diverted to personal accounts. His family's sterling reputation was built on a foundation of fraud so extensive it took Chen's entire team to map it all out. Meanwhile, I moved into the Ritz-Carlton suite, a sprawling penthouse with views of the common. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had always refused to stay there, claiming it was nouveau riche. Now I woke every morning to sunlight streaming through windows he'd never see. I hired a stylist not for vanity but for armor. When I walked into that courtroom, I would look like the woman Marcus had tried to convince everyone I could never be. Powerful, untouchable, worthy. The legal filing happened on a Thursday, exactly 1 month after Marcus had locked me out. Diane had timed it perfectly. Marcus was in a board meeting with his investors when the papers were served. The photos Chen took showed him going from confused to furious to terrified as he read through the allegations. By that afternoon, the story had leaked to the press. Thornton heir accused of fraud in explosive divorce filing. The Boston Globe ran it on the front page of the business section. The Herald went with the more salacious, high society love triangle ends in criminal allegations. Marcus tried to call me 17 times that day. His mother Patricia left 3 voicemails, each more desperate than the last. Lisa posted a rambling Instagram story, claiming I was lying, that she was the victim, that Marcus had manipulated her. Then she deleted her entire account. The next morning, federal investigators showed up at Marcus's office. The FBI had been very interested in the evidence my father had compiled about the Thornton family finances. It turned out they'd been building a case for years but lacked the inside information to make it stick. Now they had everything they needed. Marcus's assets were frozen that afternoon. The house in Beacon Hill was sealed pending investigation. His cars were impounded. The country club revoked his membership. In 24 hours, he went from Prince of Boston society to pariah. His mother Patricia called me directly, her voice stripped of its usual condescension. "Anna, please. We can work this out. The family can make you a very generous offer." "The family doesn't have anything to offer," I replied. "Your money's frozen, remember? And even if it wasn't, I don't need it. I have my own." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally she whispered, "How?" "My father was smarter than all of you combined. He saw this coming and made sure I'd be protected." "Your father was nobody." She spat, the venom returning. "My father was William Williams, and he was worth 10 of your son." The divorce proceedings moved quickly after that. Marcus's lawyer, faced with overwhelming evidence and criminal charges, advised him to settle. The prenup was voided. I got the house, though I didn't want it. I got half of Marcus's legitimate assets, the ones that weren't seized by the FBI. I got my dignity back. Lisa fled to California, claiming she needed space to heal. The baby she was carrying, the one that was supposed to secure her position as the next Mrs. Thornton, suddenly wasn't mentioned anymore. Some whispered she'd never been pregnant at all, that it had been one more manipulation in a relationship built on lies. Elena flew in from California for the final hearing. We sat together in the courthouse cafe, 2 women bound by the same scar. "You did what I couldn't," she said. "You had resources I didn't have. I had a father who loved me enough to plan for the worst while hoping for the best. She smiled sadly. We all need someone like that. Marcus appeared in court looking haggard, his usual armor of expensive suits and family privilege stripped away. He'd aged 10 years in 3 months. When the judge read the verdict granting me the divorce and everything Diane had fought for, he didn't even react. The fight had gone out of him when the FBI presented their evidence, when his investors pulled out, when his world collapsed like the house of cards. It had always been. As we left the courthouse, he called out to me, "Anna." I turned. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Was it worth it destroying everything? I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just showed everyone what was already broken. 6 months have passed since that night in the rain. The Thornton estate has been sold, the proceeds going to pay back defrauded investors. Marcus is under house arrest awaiting trial on federal charges. His mother, Patricia, moved to her sister's house in Connecticut, too ashamed to show her face in Boston society. I bought a house in Cambridge not far from where I grew up. It's modest by Thornton standards, but perfect for me. 3 bedrooms, a garden where I'm growing tomatoes like my father used to, a study, where I've hung his picture next to my diplomas. I went back to teaching, but differently this time. I started a private school for underprivileged kids, funded by the investment returns from my inheritance. We have small classes, individualized attention, and a motto my father would have loved: knowledge is the only wealth no one can steal. The black card sits in a safety deposit box, now its purpose served. But I keep my father's wallet with me, still transferred to each new purse like a talisman. Inside, I've added a new photo one Chen's investigator found in my father's office archives. It's of Dad and me at my college graduation, both of us smiling, neither of us knowing what the future held, but facing it together anyway. I've also started a foundation in my father's name. It helps women leaving abusive relationships, particularly financial abuse. We provide legal resources, temporary housing, and most importantly, forensic accounting services to uncover hidden assets and financial manipulation. Elena serves on the board. She says it's the kind of resource she wished had existed 15 years ago. Claire and I have lunch every week now. She told me she'd suspected about Marcus for years but didn't know how to tell me. You seemed so happy, she said. Or maybe I wanted to believe you were. I wanted to believe it too, I admitted. The strangest encounter came last month. I was at Whole Foods when I saw Lisa. She was working as a cashier, her artist dreams apparently abandoned along with her designer clothes. She saw me, started to speak, then thought better of it. I could have been cruel, could have said something cutting. Instead, I simply paid for my groceries and left. The best revenge, as my father said, isn't destruction. It's success. Sometimes I think about the timing of it all. How my father somehow knew to prepare for exactly this scenario. How he'd hidden millions not for himself but for my liberation. How the wallet I'd carried as a sentimental token turned out to be the key to my salvation. Thomas Blackwood still manages the investments. We meet quarterly to review the portfolios, and he always mentions my father. He was the smartest man I ever met, he said at our last meeting. Not because he could track money, but because he understood that wealth without wisdom is just expensive poverty. I've learned that there are different kinds of inheritance. Marcus inherited money and status, but no character. Lisa inherited charm, but no loyalty. I inherited something more valuable than all the Thornton millions, of father's love that extended beyond death protection, that activated when I needed it most, and the knowledge that I was worth saving. The school is thriving. 23 students so far, each one bright and eager and deserving of chances they wouldn't otherwise get. One girl, Maria, reminds me of myself at that age, quiet, watchful, carrying too much responsibility for someone so young. Her father works 3 jobs. Her mother died last year. She wants to be an accountant. Like someone who helped me once, I told her when she asked why I started the school. They must have been special. He was. Last week I received a letter from Marcus's lawyer. Marcus wanted to meet to talk, to explain. I threw it away unopened. There's nothing he could say that would matter now. The man I married never existed. The life we built was a performance. The only real thing to come from those 10 years was the lesson that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you really have. And what I've always had, was a father who loved me enough to ensure that when my world collapsed, I'd have the tools to build a better one. The bank still has that black card in their records, listed as one of only 5 ever issued. The others belong to people whose names I'd recognize from history books, people who'd uncovered treasures or secrets worth fortunes. My father, William Williams from Dorchester, son of a mechanic and a seamstress, was one of them. Sometimes late at night, I imagine him working all those hours following all those financial trails, knowing that someday his daughter might need more than his love could provide while he was alive. I imagine him setting up the accounts, writing the letters, arranging the lawyers, all while coming home to help me with homework and make sure I ate vegetables. That's love. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts or family names that open doors. Love is working in silence to build safety nets for people who don't even know they're walking on a tightrope. Love is trusting that someday, when everything else fails, what you've built will be enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt trapped, abandoned, or betrayed by those you trusted most, remember this: sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who seem to have nothing, are the ones who've prepared everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, a father's love is stronger than any lock, any prenup, any carefully constructed cage. My name is Anna Williams. I was nobody. Then I was somebody's wife, and now I'm myself. And that, it turns out, is worth more than all the Thornton money in the world. The rain still makes me think of that night standing outside while my life shattered. But now I also think of the morning after walking into that bank with nothing but hope and my father's wallet, discovering that I'd been carrying my salvation with me all along. We all carry something with us. Maybe it's not a black metal card or millions in hidden accounts. Maybe it's knowledge or strength, or just the stubborn refusal to let someone else's cruelty define our worth. Whatever it is, trust that when you need it most, it will be enough. My father knew that. Now I know it too. And if you've made it this far in my story, maybe you're beginning to know it as well. What would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted most had been preparing your escape route all along? Have you ever carried something with you not knowing its true value until the moment you needed it most? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of unexpected strength and redemption. Share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the best revenge truly is success, and that love, real love, protects us even from beyond the grave. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you're worth more than anyone who tries to convince you otherwise. You carry your own salvation even if you don't know it yet.